Welcome back to Car-Pinionated, our weekly and slightly irreverent talk about cars, the car industry, and driving in general. I'm Doug Stewart, Senior Digital Content Producer for Fox 61 in Hartford. From Chicago, we have Jeff Buchholz, writer and editor at WBBM in Chicago, who regrets not buying a 1989 Escort GT.
Correct.
And from Fairfield County, beautiful Fairfield County here in Connecticut, Glenn Packman, improv comedian and fellow car enthusiast, and once for a brief interlude owned a 1972 Opel GT. So what I wanted to talk to you guys this week is about the big car shows that used to happen or still happening to some degree or another. And when I talk about, car shows fall, if you're not aware of this, the car shows fall in two different categories. There's the ones that the manufacturers commit to, and then you have the local ones, which is local dealers. And so we're talking about the New York show, the Chicago show, the Detroit show, and the LA show. And I think that's pretty much it for American shows. But you also have European and Japanese and stuff like that. So what's happening over the past couple years or so is that you see less and less manufacturers participating in those shows. And what used to be 2 days of press previews for New York is now like a day and a little bit more, where you would go, press event, every 30 minutes was another press event. And Jeff, you've been to Chicago a lot. Glenn and I have been to New York, had a great time going to New York. Jeff, what do you think is the reasoning behind car companies wanting to pull out of these things?
I think they have found new ways to market cars to prospective buyers apart from parading them in front of us. Ways that are easier and considerably less expensive. For years, those four shows that you described, LA, Detroit, Chicago, and New York, in chronological order roughly, were kind of the big shows. And you're right. I mean, car companies would do these big reveals, and these executives would come out and poorly read a teleprompter copy about why their car was better than the one that they used to sell.
Yeah.
And then, everybody would get into a scrum, and everybody would fire questions off about whatever local thing was going on, or whatever, detail or rumor or something else. And then everybody would run on to the next one. I covered the Chicago show and the Detroit show for years. And it was grueling. And it was, it was days of Chicago used to be 2 full days of previews. Toyota would rent a whole ballroom to bring out they did rent a whole ballroom to bring out the FJ Cruiser back in the day. I still have the tape measure I got at that reveal, and it's really nice. The economy of the whole thing just kind of became ridiculous. Car companies are selling cars in different ways now. They're using social media a lot more. They're using TikTok a lot more, and Instagram, and their own, sort of dedicated sites. I mean, it's kind of it's one of the reasons that car companies don't print brochures anymore. Because who needs inventory of all that stuff, right? And they can show a car in 360 view and give people a virtual tour of the car in a way that's a lot easier and reaches a lot more people than doing a reveal at a press conference. And for every reveal that makes news, the benchmark being the introduction of the Jeep Grand Cherokee in 1990, when Lee Iacocca and Coleman Young put it through the plate glass window at what is now the Huntington Bank Pavilion and what was then called Cobo Hall in Detroit. There were a lot of other reveals that were really uninteresting or really bad or really stilted. Now what you have is, well, and there's another thing that happened. The other thing that happened is that CES happened. The Consumer Electronics Show has
Mm,
become a place where a lot of car companies go now because
yeah.
automobiles and trucks are now showcases for technology as much as they are mechanical things. And that'll even be more the case when electrification becomes a bigger deal. And the way that you set your car apart from another manufacturer is the level of technology, the level of whatever. That plus the last 4 years in this country of people being concerned about gathering in big spaces with
Hmm.
lots of people I remember being at the Detroit show. And by the way, the Huntington Bank Pavilion is an incredibly small venue for being an international
Right.
show. I mean, I remember fighting through scrums with a microphone trying to get in somebody's face, just up against every other person on the planet trying to get an interview with somebody. And I couldn't imagine, I couldn't imagine that, in 2021 or 2022. I mean,
Mm,
it's kind of a different world now, really.
yeah.
Car shows are still good for people who are buying cars, but
Hmm.
again, a lot
Yeah.
of a lot of dealers won't want to go, don't go, or manufacturers don't go. And indeed, at the Chicago show, Stellantis wasn't there. And for years, one of the top attractions at the Chicago show was Camp Jeep.
Hmm.
Uh, McCormick
And,
Place, yeah, McCormick Place in Chicago is an enormous venue, and it had enough room for this giant test track where
mhm.
people could, ride in a Jeep as it went up and over this hill
Right.
or something.
Through the
And
water. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And that was a fun experience. But Stellantis didn't want to do that this year. So they've found other ways to get to people that are, less time consuming, less expensive, less direct, or less or more direct really
Mm.
than, a lot of the other venues that they've had before.
The Jeep thing, I saw it at several times in New York. And one time it was inside in the Javits Center. And the Javits Center has its big halls, the traditional big hall, which has another floor underneath that's the same
Mhm,
size, but the roof is not that, the ceilings are shorter.
mhm,
And then about maybe 15 years ago, they built an addition to the side of it that is probably, I don't know, Glenn, like half the size of the big
Yeah,
hall.
yeah,
Yeah.
about.
And Jeep took that whole thing over for a couple years. And then there
Mm,
were a couple years where they put it out front, right?
mm,
And but it took up a lot of space, and I'm sure it was very expensive to
mhm,
do.
mhm.
Um, but it, sent a message. And and I saw like the tail end of those kind of Chrysler reveals. There was I'll never forget going to I'd have to look at the exact date, but let's say it's 2006 that they were introducing new Wranglers and the Compass and the Patriot. And they had covered them with dirt, and they had the New York Fire Department spraying hoses at them to move the dirt off. And I don't think they really planned on how the mud would sort of fly all over the place. But anyway, but Glenn, what are your memories of going? We've been to a number of them.
yeah,
What are your
absolutely.
memories?
Well, my take on this is going to be more of like a layperson's take
Yeah.
because you both work in media, whereas I am just some schnook. Um, with a,
No, you're
with a
more than
job
that.
in real estate, and I do improv on the side.
That's
Thank
Mr. Schnook to us, right?
they call me Mr. Schnook. Thank you. I've been blessed to have a friend in the media that has allowed me to go on media days because, as just somebody who would be attending a car show on a not regular day, I would not be attending, especially New York. It's just it's overwhelmed with people. It's
Yeah.
mobs and mobs of people,
Mhm.
half of whom, forgive me, bring their children who are just in the way, you know. So if I'm
Yeah.
like really interested in sitting in a car and getting a good look at it, I'm probably throwing out some 8-year-old who is behind the wheel first, you know. Nothing against 8-year-olds, mind you, but you know,
We were 8-year-olds once.
we were
Right.
8-year-olds once. I was way more well behaved. So, you know, there's that. There's the inconvenience factor. It's just speaking from New York to get to the Javits, to park,
Yeah.
take the train. They finally completed the subway over to the Javits Center. Thank you, New York City. Thank you. But it's, you know, it's just, it's wholly inconvenient. So the only ones that I was going to was on press days, which were just 10 times more fun. So from completely just a consumer standpoint, I've never been a big fan of car shows just because of the mob thing, you know.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think we're seeing the movie theater effect in so many ways. And like, yeah, it's great to see a film at the theater. People just aren't doing it that much anymore. You know, will there always be a niche for these things? Maybe. It's the expense that's the problem. So, and frankly, in the last few shows that we've been to, Doug, I don't know if we really saw any of those reveals with so much bang like they used to have before. My favorite was still when Chrysler was doing their reveal and the CEO drove out onto stage in a Fiat 500, because
Yes.
what they were actually announcing was that
Yeah.
Chrysler and Fiat were doing that, you know. So
Yeah.
that was when everybody went, whoa, you know, it was one of those moments. But there's not a lot of those anymore, it seems.
You don't have a lot of those kind of wow moments. That's true anymore.
Yeah.
I will speak in defense of 8-year-olds at auto shows, if I may. I think there are a
Because
lot of
babysitting is
people.
expensive, yeah.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
throw a kid in a Navigator for a half hour, he'll go nuts. I think most people who are car enthusiasts, car fans, probably went to car shows with their parents, older brothers,
Yeah.
whatever. I think I used to be less patient about that, I think, because I think in a lot of ways, I had sort of the same reaction, Glenn, that you did. You know, oh, could you get approved for financing? Get out of my way. But I think I've sort of come to a point where it's like, well, you know what? If there are kids clawing all over the cars and checking them out and getting excited about them, good. Because that's, because then that's sort of the gateway drug to a hobby or an interest that, I mean, has brought the three of us together, that, unites a lot of people. Like I have a lot of fun with car friends, and that's good, and that's and I think that's important. My key for going to an auto show when it's a little easier to find stuff is to go literally as soon as it opens on the Sunday morning of the show.
Yeah.
When the good church-going people of Chicagoland are at their houses of worship, I
Good idea.
am at my house of worship.
There you go.
The Buick stand. So that's usually my key to avoid a lot of that. And then I have an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours before the crush begins, and then it's like, okay, too many people, time to go.
Right, exactly. I am sort of throwing 8-year-olds everywhere under the bus, basically because I was born without any sort of parenting gene. So my apology to children everywhere. It's just natural. It's part of my genetic makeup that I don't like you. So, so it's more, it's really less the kids and more just the crush of people that you're talking about.
And it is, it's a lot of, and there's a lot of, I used to know someone who was a product specialist who worked a lot of auto shows back in the day. And the stories that they would tell about the damage inflicted on cars after a 10-day show was, and stolen shift knobs and radio
knobs
that's just the beginning. I
Right.
mean, it's really bonkers. I mean, that's another thing. It's like, well, okay, you can kind of understand maybe not wanting to go subject your cars to that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I was looking this up as I was preparing for our coverage of the Chicago Auto Show this year, and I recalled that I didn't think Tesla had ever been at the Chicago Auto Show, and in fact, they were this year, sort of. The auto show set up like an EV track inside McCormick Place, and Tesla, for the first time ever, contributed cars to that experience, which was technically run by the IBEW, the Electricians Union. It makes sense for them to do that. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
But of course, Tesla has not traditionally been part of the traditional auto show because, of course, Tesla doesn't have dealers. So they're not part of the organization that would put on the auto show necessarily. And I asked the folks at the Auto Dealers Association here in Chicago that nominally puts the Chicago Auto Show on about that, and they said, we've invited Tesla to take part in the past, and they've declined because they just don't see that as being their jam, apparently. And it's
That makes
just,
sense.
again, it's a different Tesla selling cars directly to consumers, which is controversial depending on where you live. And they have a very different model for doing it, and they certainly aren't hurting for sales. So,
Right.
maybe they don't need it.
The New York show does the EV track. It's gotten progressively larger and larger each year, and they do it on that sub level in the Javits, which for a long time was like all trucks, and then it was like the historical thing. Was one year where they had a whole bunch of old New York police vehicles, which was pretty cool. Like, hey, that's a Plymouth Fury dressed up as a cop car.
Nice.
So 2009, I think, that Glenn and I shot a video at the New York Auto Show, which I've always found hilarious. And I'm going to roll a clip here.
I don't know. I'm thinking not enough grill going on here. Maybe another 3 or 4 feet might actually be really threatening and scary. The next generation Buick LaCrosse, not your grandfather's Buick. In fact, we located grandfather's Buick at a landfill in Kearney, New Jersey.
That was just Glenn going around and improvising his way through the auto show. So, but
it was like RCR before RCR was RCR. You're like Mr. Regular walking around. Oldsmobile Bravada. Man, you really got suckered, didn't you? Or whatever. Have you not seen RCR? You should.
No.
You should. So it's this dude in Pennsylvania, like near Harrisburg, who people just loan him cars, like just regular old normal cars, and he reviews them and he riffs on them. And then it goes into some, weird kind of literary tangent, and he works with this guy named the Roman who sings a song about the car at the end and stuff. I mean, it's wild.
I gotta look this up.
It's
definitely.
It was pretty much that. Yeah, the moment where I sneezed and the little mini Toyota that was that snot green color appeared. There was a guy watching in the background who burst into hysterical laughter, and I'm like, "Thank you." And it shows at 10:30.
And he had a running joke through the whole thing was like, just send me the money, to the viewers. And I'm like, you can't say that. It's real TV. I'm gonna get in so much trouble if you say that.
Especially when people start to send money. They can't send it back.
That was that was the old Soupy Sales bit.
Exactly.
He had his show on ABC. Go get your kids. Go get your dad's wallet and send me the papers with the little papers with the pictures of old men on them.
So I mean, I do miss it. If I don't go, I think, oh well, I really should. But again, it's a lot to do, and do you want to be in that space? But I have fond memories of the 1972 Greater Hartford Auto Dealers Association Auto Show at the State Armory, which interestingly enough is across the street from where I work now, and just getting that pile of brochures and going back and looking over the brochures time and time again. It was a lot. It was, informative.
And
Formative.
they're still fun because the exhibitors are finding ways to entertain people. I mean, there's the last few years I've been to the Ford exhibit in Chicago, and they've had like a video game competition where
Yeah.
people have had racing games or off-roading type games and stuff. Like that stuff is kind of fun. And it is still fun to go and check stuff out. I took my now husband for the first time a few years ago, and he had never been to an auto show before. And and he was like, "I'll go with you because I know, you want to go." And so we get up onto the floor, and I start to get in a car, and he was like, "Wait, you can get in them?" Yeah, dude. So that was fun. That was a fun moment. And actually, if I may, I'm gonna rely on you, Doug, to be kind when I do this. I'm gonna step out of frame for a second and show
Okay.
you one of my favorite auto show souvenirs, which I
Okay.
just realized is on the shelf behind me. Please stand by. Doug, you may remember what these are.
It's
So
is this a mouse cover?
it's a pen holder, actually, that they
Oh,
used to make at the Volkswagen exhibit. They
oh,
they would press these out of recycled plastic, I guess. Like
okay.
while you waited, they had a huge machine that would mold these for you while you wait, and you get
Huh.
a slightly hot to the touch, but also super cool little Volkswagen. I have 10 years of these sitting in my house. I
Wow.
have two Beetle convertibles, two Beetles, a couple of GTIs, a Touareg. No, not a Touareg, a Tiguan. And I think there might be a Jetta up there. I can't
Uh-huh.
remember. But yeah, this is one of the GTIs. And
Yeah.
I love
Great.
these. I
Yeah.
love these things, and they haven't done this in a long time, actually. But this is just, you were talking about fun things you remember from auto shows. I still have these silly things
Yeah. Yeah.
and love
Mar
them.
Our friend Marshall would love to see those, I'm sure.
Yes.
Um, I yeah, I mean, I think of the Jeep backpack. I
Mhm.
think of there was a while there where everyone gave a flash drive, and I have this really cool
Yes.
Dodge Viper flash drive.
hmm
Yeah,
hmm
it's cool stuff.
I got
Cool
a
stuff.
multi-tool, like a Leatherman multi-tool at a Nissan exhibit one time. I think it was the 2005 Pathfinder. And
Uh-huh.
I had that thing for a long time until I inadvertently tried to take it through security at O'Hare, and I had to give it up. They're like, "Well, you can give it to someone else." I'm like, "No,
Yeah,
no. I forgot
yeah,
I owned this. Here, it's
right.
yours."
Yeah, yeah. So,
So,
all right. Well, we will miss them when they're gone. Um, but they were fun while they lasted.
mhm.
All right. So that's another week of Car-Pinionated. Guys, thank you very much for joining me. Always a pleasure. If you have any questions, concerns, stuff you want to ask, stuff you think we should cover, um, uh, uh, please give me an email. Give me an email. Send me an email at dstewart@fox61.com. If you like what you see, we have a bunch of them online on our YouTube channel. So like and subscribe wherever I'm going to put it. I don't know, in the edit. And we will see you all next week.